Reuters carried an exclusive story yesterday, headlined "Exclusive, Only Gaza Ceasefire Will Delay Retaliation, Say Iranian Officials."
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So I wanted to just say about this because been I've been trying to follow it closely and figure
Yeah.
out what's going on, and maybe you guys can can help me with this. But yeah, we have that headline from Reuters that we can put up, and this exclusive story came out. Uh, Actually, it's the first.
That's
Uh,
the one, yeah.
yeah, there we go. Um, And so basically, you can see the headline there for those who are listening. Only Gaza ceasefire will delay retaliation, say Iranian officials. And it says uh, only a ceasefire deal in Gaza stemming from hoped for talks this week would hold Iran back from direct retaliation against Israel for the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh on its soil, three senior Iranian officials said. One of the sources, a senior Iranian security official, said Iran, along with allies such as Hezbollah, would launch a direct attack if the Gaza talks fail or if it perceives Israel as dragging out negotiations. The sources did not say how long Iran would allow for talks to progress before responding. And then after that report came out, a few hours later, President Biden was asked if he expected Iran to refrain from retaliating against Israel for the brazen murder of Ismail Haniyeh if a ceasefire deal was reached, and he replied, yes. So that suggested and that raised quite a lot of hope that maybe something was being worked out behind the scenes uh, where where Iran would hold off from its retaliatory strike if there were an end to this genocide. But then today, what we see is another story from Reuters, which is uh, from this morning with the headline Hamas to stay out of Gaza truce talks, Iran considers Israel attack. And it says Hamas said on Wednesday, so reiterating today, it would not take part in a new round of Gaza ceasefire talks slated for Thursday in Qatar, dimming hopes for a negotiated truce that Iranian sources say could hold back an Iranian attack. And it says also the US had said it expects indirect talks to go ahead as planned in Qatar on Thursday, and that a ceasefire agreement was still possible. However, Axios reported that US Secretary of State Antony Blinken had postponed a trip to the Middle East that had been expected to begin on Tuesday. But earlier today, also, Israeli media reporting that Israel is sending a high level delegation made up of the Mossad chief David Barnea, Shin Bet chief Ronen Bar, and someone from the general from the military, and that CIA chief, obviously the U.S. Intelligence Agency, William Burns, is also going to be in Doha. So, what are they going to do there if Hamas doesn't show up, or will Hamas show up? Well, the Hamas position is very clear. They say we already agreed to President Biden's proposal, which he said was an Israeli proposal. When
Just
was
not.
that? Back in May or June,
Yeah,
or
Yeah.
and then repeatedly. So give us a call when you're ready to implement what everyone already agreed to.
yeah.
What they want to avoid is this Osloization, let's say, of the ceasefire negotiations, where they just drag on and on and on and on from Cairo to Rome to Doha to I don't know where, while Israel continues to murder people and escalate its massacres. And so,
And change
but
the terms, right? Israel's
and change
changing
Right,
the
the terms
terms that each of
right.
these.
constantly. Yeah, constantly changing the terms, moving the goalposts, and then. But what I want to just focus on, what I was really looking at, thinking about this morning is this pressure? I mean, it seems that Iran is playing strategically or tactically a very clever game here because there are signs that the pressure from Iran and Hezbollah is concentrating some minds. We heard President Biden link the Gaza ceasefire to the question of retaliation. Also, this morning we have a press conference by the US, UK, and German ambassador, friend of the show, Stefan Seibert, joke, of course, held a press conference in Tel Aviv today. And according to Haaretz, you see that on the screen, they emphasized that for their respective countries, their top priorities at the summit are reaching a deal to return the hostages and to prevent further escalation between Israel, Iran, and Hezbollah. And I think it's that latter point that
Yeah.
actually concerns them the most, because if they really cared about the hostages, I mean, these ambassadors are constantly showing up at press conferences with photos of the Israeli
Right.
captives behind them, but they don't care because their governments continue to support this genocide. What they really care about is preventing the Iranian retaliation, because I think there is real fear that that retaliation could really expose the extent of Israel's vulnerability and weakness, and that would be a strategic catastrophe for Israel. So all of a sudden, all this urgency now to putting all this weight and these hopes on this summit in Doha, which we don't even know if Hamas is going to show up. And before this, there was a statement by the respective national leaders. We can put that up. You can see here the statement from British Prime Minister. It's the one before that. That's the one from Chancellor Scholz. But let me see if I can find it. It's I wonder if that's again my fault. I put the wrong thing in. But there was a statement from Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, Emmanuel Macron, and Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, saying similar to what the ambassadors had said. But then that tweet, let's put that tweet back up from Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, the one that we just had on, where he says, I'll read it for those who are listening: the spiral of violence in the Middle East must be broken now. Any alternative entails unforeseen risk for the countries in the region and their people. In my phone call with the Iranian president, I urged everything be done to avoid military escalation. So you can see they're even willing to plead with Iran directly. While at the same time, they're constantly
spiral of violence, like it's a natural phenomenon.
Well, they never condemn. They never
Never.
condemn Israel for its escalation, for murdering Ismail Haniyeh, for bombing Beirut and murdering Fuad Shukr from Hezbollah. It's really such brazen hypocrisy while they continue to arm and shield Israel. And they all know, and this is the point I want to get to,
There's the statement.
that it is Israel, and specifically Benjamin Netanyahu, who is blocking a deal. And here's what is really amazing. Even Netanyahu's own defense minister is willing to say it, while American and European and other leaders are not. And over the last few days, there has been a major public spat between Netanyahu and the defense minister, Yoav Gallant. First, Gallant said publicly that Israel is the side blocking a deal, which is incredible for him to say that. And everyone in Israel understands that when he says Israel is blocking a deal, he means Netanyahu personally is blocking a deal. Then Gallant ridiculed the notion of absolute victory, and we can put up that headline from the Times of Israel, calling it gibberish. And Netanyahu hit back by calling him anti-Israel. The defense minister of Israel,
he's calling him Hamas. Yeah,
the defense. I mean, just consider the absurdity of
They
this.
haven't been in the same room in months.
no.
Well, right. It's just incredible. But the defense minister of Israel is being called anti-Israel by the prime minister of Israel. We have to take our laughs where we can. But the important thing here is that Gallant, who is the chief of the military, he's the defense minister, is saying there is no such thing as absolute victory. And this is incredible, given that Gallant is one of the most belligerent, hardline and genocidal Israeli leaders. He is the one who on October 9th announced the total siege on Gaza, cutting off food and water to 2.3 million people that he called human animals. Of course, he's still completely genocidal, but he's running up against the hard reality that we are seeing, that John is showing us in the resistance reports, that Israel cannot defeat the resistance. And he's not just talking about Gaza, he's also referring to Hezbollah in Lebanon. And what you can see there on the screen is a quote from the same Times of Israel article, recalling that Gallant was also one of the most belligerent towards Lebanon. Early in this genocide, he supported a preemptive Israeli war against Lebanon. But let's look at what he says now, and you can see it there. According to quotes leaked to Hebrew media, this is from the Times of Israel. According to quotes leaked to Hebrew media, I should just say that his comments were in a closed briefing to members of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. And now the Times of Israel tells us that according to quotes to leaked Hebrew media, Likud MKs, members of the Knesset, clashed with Gallant, asking him why Israel had not launched a war in Lebanon after 10 months of Hezbollah attacks in the north. Quote, the conditions today for a Lebanon war are the opposite of what they were at the beginning of the war, Gallant told the lawmakers, explaining that he had supported a preemptive attack at the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war in October, but has since changed his mind due to the evolving situation. Well, what is that evolving situation? It's that the Israeli military has been destroyed in Gaza, and it is being destroyed on the northern front with Lebanon. And I want to hear what John has to say, and John and Nora have to say about this, but I just want to go back for a second to those European and, of course, American leaders who continue to blame Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah. Here's Iran actually saying we will forego our right to retaliate if there's a ceasefire, that we are more interested in ending the genocide and bringing a ceasefire than we are in exercising our right to retaliation, and most importantly, restoring deterrence. We will forego that for a ceasefire, and yet they are the ones being accused of escalation, belligerence, violence, extremism. And again, now we have a second tweet. I sure hope I've got all these in the right order. I apologize for the mistakes I made today. They're entirely mine. No, this is actually the tweet. I'll drop it in the chat from Olaf Scholz. This is live TV, guys. This is how it is.
That's a second Olaf Scholz, I think. That's
here we go. Yes, this is it. So
it.
this was on August 11th. He says, we condemn the threats from Iran, Hezbollah, and others against Israel. I spoke to Netanyahu on the phone today. The destructive spiral of retaliation must be broken. It's time for an agreement to release the hostages and ceasefire. So he's condemning Iran, the victim of Israeli aggression, and Hezbollah, the victim of Israeli aggression in Beirut. And, you know, it's just breathtaking. And I just, again, wanted to point out who is really looking for de-escalation and ceasefire. It's Iran, it's Hezbollah, it's Hamas, it's all the groups and the countries that are demonized. It's Yemen who is saying we want to stop the genocide. We want nothing more than to stop the genocide. So, you know, but I want to hear what you guys think about the particularly the idea that Israel can no longer. Yoav Gallant say, "Yeah, I was for a war against Lebanon, but we can't do it now." Is that what he's saying?
He's reading the facts on the ground, right? And John, you couldn't
there
fit
was a
it into
story
your
in
resistance.
Foreign Affairs about how Netanyahu had to lock Gallant out of the building to try to delay him from coming in because they because they're ready for a war with Hezbollah, right? In October, they were ready for a war with Hezbollah. They didn't pay attention to Qassam. They paid 10 times more attention to Hezbollah, and they believed that they were ready and that that would be the moment to strike. And Netanyahu basically blocked him, like almost physically locked him out of the building. It's in Foreign Affairs. Aluf Ben, who used to be the diplomatic correspondent for Haaretz, wrote in it. So that's interesting. And then, yeah, now they're just been degraded so badly that there's clearly no way that they can fight an open war in Lebanon. But there's also no way their students are going back to school in the north. Those northern communities are not going to be repopulated. So it's a tough one. And on the ceasefire, the things I will say about the ceasefire is that Hamas is right. In Rome at the end of last month, the Mossad director arrived in Rome with a one-page memorandum that changed key factors that were already agreed upon previously, that were ones that Qassam is not going to step back from. They were the return to the north. They changed the conditions on the return to the north, which is a core principle of the ceasefire for Qassam. They added a checkpoint. In the previous meeting in May, there would be no checkpoint going back to the north. They were just going to go unarmed back to the north, but they weren't going to be put through, through a sieve where every person is shaken down. And the key is that Israel brought on that memorandum that they're staying in the Philadelphia corridor. They're staying in the Netzarim corridor. They weren't, the May agreement was that they were moving to the eastern edge, to the buffer zone. They weren't going to be in those populated areas. And now the IDF is saying, we're staying in the Philadelphia corridor for 2 years because our work there is not done. And so they just don't care about getting their people back. And so they're
Is it
in this
hubris to ask if Israel will still exist in 2 years at this rate?
That's the thing.
I've been not doing any predictions, but
Yeah.
they're pulling apart the core elements that make them a state.